10 soldiers wisely led will beat 100 without a head. The commander role in Hell Let Loose isn't all about sitting on your ass at HQ and barking orders at blueberries. Sure, that's one way to play the role, but I personally don't feel that's the most effective way to play it. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of what you need to do as commander to set your team up for success and earn the respect of your teammates. And as scary as it might sound to play commander, it's actually pretty simple when you break it down into bite-sized pieces. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. Are you ready? Okay, good. Now, pay attention here, guys, because we're going to walk through the 5 principles you need to follow in order to be an effective commander. Number 1, be respectful and open-minded. People tend to react negatively to rude, demanding behavior. So the first and most important rule of being a commander is, don't be a dick. Remember, your squad leaders are a huge asset. You want them to work with you, not against you. So be open to hearing their ideas and show them the same respect you would want from your commander. Use basic manners and acknowledge them and thank them when they do help you out. A simple, hey Trap 32, thanks for getting that Gary up, man, I appreciate it, will show your team that you recognize their actions and encourage them to continue to help you out in any way they can. As the commander, you set the tone for the entire team.
But most of all, have fun.
I never gave permission to have fun.
If you bring a positive energy to your squad leaders, they're likely to echo that same positivity not only to you, but to each other and their individual squad mates. So bring good vibes and always lead by example.
Also push in from behind. Giggity. What was that?
Don't get sucked into negativity. It's only going to distract you from being the best commander you can be. So do your best to defuse the situation and redirect the focus back to the tasks at hand. Number 2, game and map awareness. If you don't fully understand the game modes, resource systems, supplies, garrisons, and how to read the HUD, then I strongly suggest you avoid the commander role for now until you gain a bit more experience with the game. I've got several other tutorial videos for the game on my channel that'll help you learn those things, so maybe go explore those for now and then come back to this video when you're ready. But if you've got a solid grasp on the game mechanics and a fair amount of experience and you're ready to step up to the commander role, then keep on watching. Okay, this next tip is huge, guys. The single most helpful thing you can do as commander in Hell Let Loose is to make sure that your team has as many garrisons as possible at all times. Think about it. This whole game really boils down to which team can control territories better, so having many strategically placed spawn points is absolutely critical to success. You simply can't control a territory when your only spawn is 400 meters away from it. Now your team can have a maximum of 8 garrisons at a time, and if you can get a few squad leaders to help you out with this, great. But don't just assume they'll take care of it. You need to take ownership of it yourself and ensure that it gets done. It's just like when I tell my kids the dishes need to get done. They all just assume someone else will do it, and then 20 minutes later, the dishes haven't been done and the kids have all run off to play. If you think about it, the commander is the only role in the game that can single-handedly build a garrison without the help of another player. You can spawn a supply truck, or call in a supply drop when and where you need in order to get the job done without asking for anyone's help. So you'd be doing your team a huge disservice if you didn't take full advantage of this ability. After all, with great power comes great responsibility, right? In the opening few minutes of the game, your focus should be on grabbing a supply truck so that you can quickly establish a couple of defensive garrisons in friendly controlled territory. You'll be able to get 2 garrisons built with a single supply truck run, assuming you don't get that sumbitch stuck in a ditch somewhere, that is. Now since you can't build a garrison in neutral territory, I like to build one just outside the neutral territory in your friendly controlled sector. This acts as a base of operations to help your team sustain their initial push to capture the middle sector. I then like to build the other garrison somewhere near the closest locked friendly strong point. But these are just suggestions, so feel free to implement your own strategy here. And hey, before we continue, I have another suggestion for you. If you're finding this video helpful so far, show me a little bit of love and hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future uploads. Alright, back to the guide. While working on getting these initial garrisons built, it's a good idea to spawn another supply truck at one of your HQs and ask your squad leader to have their engineers use it to get some nodes built for you.
Can I get some guys to build nodes, please?
Without resource nodes, you're going to burn through your resources mighty quick, and then you won't be able to use your commander abilities when you need to.
Because if we don't get no nodes, then we don't get no rolls.
So ask your squad leaders to prioritize getting resource nodes built within the first 10 minutes or so of the game. Trust me, if you don't, you'll be kicking yourself later for it. And shit, your teammates will probably kick you too. So let's go back to building garrisons. Try not to build them directly inside the strong points, because if the enemy drops something like a bombing run on the point, your garrison will likely get wiped out.
That's a great looking bomb run.
Hell yeah, brother. Open for a garrison. Yep, got the garrison.
Okay.
Instead, place them in areas surrounding your strong points. Not only are they less likely to get destroyed there, but they also light up red on the map when enemies get within 50 meters of them. So you'll essentially have a radar system that alerts you when enemies are near.
Oh shit, our garrison's hot behind hospice.
This can be extremely valuable intel for your defensive squads. Oh, and speaking of defensive squads, always make sure you have at least a couple of squads dedicated to defense.
I would like probably a couple of squads to kind of be dedicated defense. Where are my defensive boys at?
Yeah, Charlie can help out with defense.
That would be wonderful. Charlie would be appreciated.
The number one reason teams lose in Hell Let Loose is because they get overextended on their attack and nobody stays back to defend. So whatever you do, do not make this fatal mistake.
They're both capping. And there it goes.
Fuck.
This is where understanding how to interpret your HUD is an extremely important skill, as it tells you if and when the enemy has started to capture your strong point.
Now we're losing town center.
The time it takes to capture a sector is constant. You can't speed up the rate of capture by getting more bodies on the point. So if the enemy starts capturing your sector before you start capturing theirs, you will lose the capture race. An experienced commander will understand this and ask his team to fall back and defend at all costs. So like I said, keep a close eye on your HUD. Also, make sure you frequently check in with your defensive squads to see how they're holding up and ask them if they need anything.
I'm redeploying right now, guys. How are we doing in St. Marie?
So far, so good. We're holding it down.
Copy.
If they've got some engineers, it might be a good idea to drop some supplies for them so they can start fortifying.
Good job fortifying St. Marie, guys. Looks good.
If at any point they start to feel overwhelmed, pull some additional bodies back to help them defend. You can always regroup and start attacking again once your defensive sector is secure. If you do lose the sector, ask all your squad leaders to stop attacking the now locked strong point and fall back. If you can, try to put your most communicative squads on defense, as they can relay vital information about how things are going on defense.
We got enemies coming in from the north of Foy.
Once you've established multiple defensive garrisons, you can then start to look for opportunities to build forward attack garrisons in enemy territory. By this time, you'll probably have at least some squad leaders behind enemy lines who can help you establish these garrisons. But keep in mind, building a garrison behind enemy lines costs 100 supplies, and support players only carry 50 supplies. So even if your squad leaders have a support player in their squad, they won't be able to build a garrison in enemy territory unless they're able to work with another squad or coordinate what's called a double drop. This is where your support player drops their 50 supplies, then redeploys, and another squad member switches to support and drops an additional 50 supplies to give you 100 supplies total. But honestly, in public matches, squads are often a mix of random strangers, and coordinating any of this can be a bit difficult for your squad leaders. So it's usually more efficient to just deliver them the supplies they need, either with a supply truck or with a supply drop. Using a supply truck is a high risk, high reward endeavor. Supply trucks are loud, easy to spot, and they'll take several minutes to drive all the way into enemy territory. And this is especially true because you'll want to stick to the edges of the map in order to avoid getting your ass blown up.
All you need.
And if you fail, you've wasted valuable time and resources. On the flip side, supply trucks carry enough supplies to build 2 garrisons, so if you're able to pull it off, you can establish 2 attack garrisons and really give your team a big offensive advantage. Alternatively, you can use the supply drop commander ability, which is much quicker and easier, but supply drops are also pretty easy to spot, so make sure you're strategic about when and where you drop them. Don't get too aggressive and try to drop them just outside the enemy strong point, or they'll get spotted and dismantled almost immediately. Instead, drop them further out and in a direction the enemy won't be expecting. And make sure you don't drop supplies near your recon squads, as it'll give away their location, something they'll likely not be very thrilled about. Instead, let your squad leaders know where you plan to drop the supplies and ask whoever is closest to that location to make their way over there to build a garrison.
Calling in supplies in E5 there south of the point so we can try to establish a forward garrison and start probing in from the south.
I can get that.
Awesome, thank you, man.
But overall, you should prioritize defensive garrisons over forward attack garrisons. Always shoot to have a minimum of 3 defensive garrisons at all times. And remember, you only need to control the majority of the sectors when the game ends to secure the victory. So don't get so fixated on attacking the next strong point that you neglect your defenses. Say it with me, guys. Defense wins games. Number 3, communicate. Your squad leaders are an extension of you as the commander and can help plan and ultimately execute your strategy. So keep them involved throughout the entire game and provide them with an overall direction. Find the squad leaders who are willing to help and lean on them to help you get things done. These guys are your eyes on the battlefield and can provide super valuable information to you both verbally and via map markers. Each squad leader that reports and marks high value targets on your map increases your overall visibility and understanding of how the battle is evolving.
Enemy moving down the road on my infantry mark.
You can then use this information to make informed decisions. For example, if a squad leader places an enemy garrison marker on the map, you might use that info to call in a bombing run and wipe it out.
Thank you.
Enemy garrison destroyed, alright.
And make sure you're returning the favor to your squad leaders. You've got a pair of binoculars and a map of your own. You can and should be marking things on the map as well. If you spot an enemy tank, place a marker on your map so your squad leaders can sick their AT players on it. Even though you have a variety of commander abilities, without proper coordination with your squad leaders, they won't be very effective. If there's a high concentration of enemy infantry making it difficult to capture the strong point, you might consider calling in a bombing run. But before you do, take a minute to make sure your squad leaders are fully prepared to take advantage of it. Do you have squads nearby who can push into the point once the bombing run is finished? Do you have garrisons and outposts set up outside the strong point to help sustain the attack? If you're going to commit to a bombing run, make sure you maximize its effects by being ready to strike when the enemy's lines are weakened. When communicating, try to keep it clear and concise. Keep in mind that your squad leaders are actively communicating with their own squads. If you get too wordy as a commander, the level of noise will overwhelm your squad leaders and make them less effective. It's usually more effective to ask a specific person or squad to accomplish a task. This eliminates any ambiguity and makes it clear what you want and from who. If that squad leader is unresponsive or refuses the request, move on and ask someone else. I also personally prefer to call people by name rather than their squad name. So instead of saying, "Hey Mike squad," you would say, "Hey Master of Pudding, can I get you to build a garrison on those supplies I dropped in D6 please?" My main reason for this is that sometimes squad leaders will forget or not know their squad name, and therefore they won't realize you're speaking to them. But using their actual name will cut right through the noise and bet your ass it'll catch their attention. Number 4. Understand your commander abilities. The commander role comes with a variety of unique and exclusive abilities which you need to have a good understanding of in order to take full advantage. So let's take a quick look at each of the commander's abilities, starting with those that use manpower. Establish Airhead. An airhead is a temporary spawn point for your entire team which can be airdropped anywhere on the map except for locked enemy territory. Players can spawn on them every 30 seconds and they last for 3 minutes provided they're not destroyed by the enemy first. They can be a great way to quickly get lots of bodies behind enemy lines to mix up your attack on a well-defended strongpoint and catch the enemy off guard. Since airheads are easily spotted by the enemy, it's a good idea to drop them a ways out from the enemy strongpoint to better conceal them, and to give your squad leaders some room to fan out, place outposts, and attack from multiple angles. Just make sure that when you do drop an airhead, you give your squad leaders a heads up so they can organize their squads and prepare to deploy on them. You should also make sure that you don't have too many squads redeploy on the airhead and leave your defensive sectors wide open to being captured by the enemy. Airheads cost 400 manpower and have a 10-minute cooldown before you can drop another one. Dismantle Garrison. The Dismantle Garrison ability allows you to select any garrison on the map and dismantle it remotely. This costs 100 manpower and has a 5-minute cooldown. Now, why would you want to dismantle a garrison? Well, each team is allowed a maximum of 8 garrisons. So if you're already at your limit, but want to build a new garrison, you're going to need to dismantle one.
Command, I want to set up another garrison south, but we're at 8 already.
Having said that, I don't recommend ever using this ability because you can always just redeploy on the garrison you want to dismantle and do it by hand without spending the 100 manpower.
Alright, that garrison's down, go ahead.
Alright, thank you.
Reinforce. The Reinforce ability doubles the capture weight of all strong points in your friendly controlled sectors for a 2-minute duration. So normally each soldier that's inside the black circle has a capture weight of 3. When you activate the Reinforce ability, each soldier inside the circle has a capture weight of 6 for a 2-minute duration. If the enemy is starting to overwhelm your defensive strongpoint, it's a good idea to activate Reinforce to make it more difficult for the enemy to start capturing and give your team a better chance of holding them off. But since the cap weight is doubled only for people inside the black circle, don't activate this ability unless you have some bodies inside or nearby the black circle. This ability costs 200 manpower and has a 5-minute cooldown. Encouraged. The Encouraged ability doubles the resources you gain from resource nodes for a duration of 5 minutes. To understand the impact this ability can have, let's go ahead and retire to the nerdery with our calculators. So each team gets a constant base resource gain of plus 30 per minute of each resource type: fuel, munitions, and manpower. Building resource nodes generates additional resources on top of this base resource gain. Each individual node generates plus 10 resources per minute of whatever type it is. So let's just use munitions as an example. If we have 3 munitions nodes built, we will gain plus 30 munitions per minute from our 3 nodes. Add that to the base resource gain of plus 30 per minute, and we're looking at a total resource gain of plus 60 munitions per minute. Now, if we activate Encouraged, the plus 30 munitions per minute that we're gaining from our resource nodes is doubled for 5 minutes. So this brings our total munitions gain up to plus 90 per minute. So over a 5-minute period, we will have gained a total of 450 munitions plus 90 per minute times 5 minutes, compared to 300 total munitions without activating Encouraged. So by activating Encouraged, we gain 150 more munitions than we would have otherwise gained. If you only have 1 or 2 sets of nodes built, you'll be losing manpower in order to gain fuel and munitions. But if you have 3 full sets of nodes, you're actually still coming out ahead in manpower as well. So that's why I recommend using Encouraged when you have 3 full sets of nodes built. Now I know this can be a little bit confusing to wrap your head around, so I've put together an infographic that breaks down the math and makes it a bit more easy to understand. I've included that in the video description, so make sure you check that out and save it for future reference. Converting resources. This ability allows you to convert 100 of one type of resource to 60 of another. If you have a surplus of one kind of resource and could use more of another, you can use the conversion ability to balance things out a bit. This ability has a 5-minute cooldown. Next, we'll take a look at the commander abilities that use munitions, starting with the ammo drop. The ammo drop is exactly what it sounds like. You can airdrop a large ammo box to a desired location on the map to resupply your team. Rearming from one of these ammo boxes will restock all different types of ammo, and up to 12 players can restock from a single ammo box. This ability costs 100 munitions and has a 10-minute cooldown. Honestly, since most players don't live long enough to run out of ammo anyways, this ability's usefulness is kinda limited. But if you have the munitions available, it might be a good idea to call in an ammo drop when making a defensive stand on the strong point. Supply drop. The supply drop allows you to airdrop 100 supplies anywhere on the map. It comes in extremely handy for quickly delivering supplies to your squad leaders so they can build garrisons. Just be aware that enemies can see the parachute and will likely head in that direction to try to intercept those supplies and stop you from building a new garrison. So keep that in mind when deciding when and where to drop your supplies. I personally believe in dropping as many supplies as your resources will allow, and trying to have multiple supply boxes in each sector. That way if you do lose a sector and it wipes out your garrisons, you have supplies scattered all around the other sectors to build new ones. But ideally you've already built garrisons in those sectors, since that's mainly what you've been focusing your attention on, right Commander? This ability costs 50 munitions and has a 2-minute cooldown. Recon plane. A reconnaissance plane flies over the area you select on your map, which reveals the location of enemy infantry, trucks, and armor within that area. Infantry shows up as red dots, trucks show up as hollow diamonds, and armor shows up as solid diamonds. These markers are only visible to the commander, the squad leaders, and the support players. They don't continue to update as the enemy moves, they're simply static snapshots of where the enemy was when the plane flew overhead. Recon planes do not reveal the location of enemy garrisons, outposts, resource nodes, or buildable structures. Nor do they reveal the location of enemy recon units or infantry inside buildings with a roof. Recon planes are super useful for gathering intel on the enemy's positions in order to more effectively use things like bombing runs, strafing runs, Katyusha strikes, and artillery. Recon planes cost 150 munitions and have a 5-minute cooldown. Precision strike. The Precision Strike ability calls in a fighter plane to execute a devastating blow to a target you designate on your map. The main use of these dive bomb attacks is to eliminate pesky enemy armor, but accuracy is key. You should only call in a precision strike on a tank if it's completely stationary, or you're highly unlikely to hit anything. So make sure you have good intel and accurate markers before calling this baby in. The US Precision Strike consists of 2 P-47 Thunderbolt planes that drop 1 bomb each. For the Soviets, it's an Ilyushin IL-2 plane, which delivers a rocket strafe consisting of a few rockets. And the German Precision Strike consists of a single Stuka that drops a bomb, complete with that iconic and terrifying siren to make those on the receiving end shit their pants. The Precision Strike ability costs 250 munitions and has a 20-minute cooldown. Strafing Run. This ability calls in a plane which delivers a machine gun strafing run on a designated area of the map. It's only really effective against infantry that are really bunched up or for clearing infantry who are trying to dismantle your garrison. So if you notice one of your defensive garrison lights up red, a strafing run is a quick way to attempt to clear it by wiping out any enemy infantry who are near it. This strategy doesn't really work on forward attack garrisons, however, as they are dismantled too quickly by enemies. By the time you call it in, it's already too late. Okay, garrison is gone, we missed it. Outside of these very specific scenarios, I don't really recommend using this ability, as it simply isn't very effective in most cases. And at a cost of 150 munitions with a 4-minute cooldown, it's an expensive way to kill a couple of infantry. Bombing Run. For the US and German teams, this ability calls in a bomber plane to drop a series of devastating bombs on the designated area of your map in a straight line. I recommend first calling in a recon plane to pinpoint the largest concentration of enemies on the map, then call in the bombing run based on that information. You can rotate the angle of the attack to better align with your intended targets. Bombing runs kill infantry, trucks, garrisons and outposts, resource nodes and repair stations, just about everything but armor. So this ability can be an extremely effective way to clear enemies from a strong point. As mentioned earlier, you want to be sure you have your squads prepared to quickly make a strong push right after the area clears in order to make really good use of this ability, especially as bombing runs cost 300 munitions and have a 10-minute cooldown, so make them count. For the Soviet team, this ability looks a bit different. Instead of a bomber plane, this ability calls in a Katyusha rocket strike, also known as Stalin's organ. No, not that organ. Get your mind out of the gutter. This is a barrage of rockets fired from your HQ at the designated spot on the map. It's a bit less concentrated and precise than the US and German bombing run, but it only has a 5-minute cooldown, so it can be utilized more frequently. It costs 300 munitions and kills all the same things that bombing runs do, plus it looks and sounds pretty frickin' sweet. Finally, we have the ability to spawn vehicles, which is the only ability that uses fuel other than converting fuel to another resource type. From supply and transport trucks to half-tracks and armor, you can spawn in a variety of vehicles at one of the 3 HQs. Each faction has its own unique vehicles that can be spawned, and they each have their own costs and cooldown times. I put together a graphic in the video description that shows this information for each vehicle, so definitely check that out. There's a limit of 12 vehicles per team, and you can only spawn a single vehicle at each HQ at a time, so vehicles will have to be taken outside the HQ before you can spawn a new one at that same HQ. So that wraps up all of the commander abilities, which leads me to my 5th and final principle that you need to follow in order to be a good commander. Number 5, don't take things personally. Even if you implement the things covered in this video, there's a good chance your first couple games as commander will be a bit rough around the edges. This is perfectly understandable given the scope and importance of the commander role. So just like when you first started playing Hell Let Loose, it can be a good idea to be honest about your lack of experience in the commander role. Let your squad leaders know this is your first time playing commander, but also let them know that you're happy to take feedback and guidance from them. Some of your squad leaders may have more experience playing the commander role and will have no problem coaching you through it as the game unfolds. These experiences are incredibly valuable and will help you feel more comfortable in the role. But you may also find yourself dealing with some less than savory characters who only want to call out your mistakes and point the finger at you. It's really important not to let those people scare you away from playing the role. You aren't going to be perfect, but as long as you're making an effort to support your team to the best of your ability, most people will be totally chill and try to help you out. You're gonna make mistakes along the way.
Alright, hold on guys. Somehow I accidentally called it in the wrong spot. Everybody clear out of G8.
But you'll learn from all of them and experience a ton of growth from each of these experiences. So be open to criticism and try not to take it personally. Instead, look at criticism as an opportunity to improve your game. Finally, let's take a look at the loadouts available to the commander. The standard issue loadout for the US includes the M1A1 Thompson for the primary weapon and the Colt M1911 for a sidearm. The German standard issue loadout includes the MP40 for the primary weapon and the Luger P08 for a sidearm. And the Soviet standard issue loadout includes the PPSH-41 as the primary weapon and the Nagant M1895 for a sidearm. All three standard issue loadouts also include 2 smoke grenades, 2 bandages, a pocket watch for building garrisons, binoculars, and a knife or shovel for shanking or bashing the enemy. The US and German factions have an alternative commander loadout called Veteran that you'll unlock at level 3. The US loadout is identical to the standard issue loadout, except it swaps out the Thompson for an M1 Garand. The German level 3 loadout swaps out the MP40 and Luger P08 for the Gewehr 43 and Walther P38. While your focus should mainly be on making sure your team has plenty of garrisons and is actively defending your sectors, sometimes you need to jump into the combat yourself. The commander loadouts are actually pretty solid for combat, so as long as your team is in good shape in terms of garrisons, go ahead and start blasting. Alright guys, you're ready to give the commander role a go. I'll leave you with one final thought though. Sometimes you follow all the best practices outlined in this video and it still just isn't enough. Sometimes the enemy just plain old outplays you. And that's okay. There's lots of factors at play, some of which are outside your control. So just try your best and most importantly, have fun with it.
Goddamn engineers.
Speaking of having fun, if you're on PC, you've got to come check out my server, SoulSniper Soldiers of Fortune. We'd love to host you and help coach you through your first few games as commander. And if you enjoy the server, you can get VIP access by becoming a member using the link in the video description below. With VIP access, you won't have to wait in that pesky queue anymore to get in the server. So come goof with us, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'd love to hear how your first game as commander goes, so leave a comment, or better yet, join my Discord and tell me all about it. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Be sure to check out my other role guides and subscribe if you haven't already. Peace!